Pupulsuhan natin ang mga opinyon at pagtindig ng mga Pilipino tungkol sa mga isyong panlipunan.
Lahat ng trending at top stories sa Rappler ngayong linggo, pag-uusapan natin sa online show na ito.
Ako po si Jules Giang, Head of Community ng Rappler.
At ako naman si Happy Ferraren ng membership program ng Rappler. So ngayon tayo po ay Tumindig, Makialam at Kumilos.
Ito po ang Courage On. This is a community show produced by Rappler Civic Engagement Arm, Movie PH, in partnership, of course, with Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom. And we spotlight the pressing issues in the Philippines and the ways we can take action on them together. So friends, here on Zoom and on Facebook and all social media platforms of Rappler, welcome to episode 8.
Yes, I can't believe this is episode 8. And aside from Zoom, so meron tayong mga kasama dito sa Zoom room. Hello to our participants here. This is being streamed live on the Rappler social media accounts like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So if you're on that, hello to all of those of you who are watching and joining us today.
Good afternoon. Okay, so gusto rin naman syempre natin, Happy, kilalanin yung mga organization na gustong iparating ang Courage On show sa iba't ibang komunidad. Maraming salamat po sa ating co-presenters sa episode na ito. We have Likha Pahinarya, we have the Louisian Courier, and ang Rizalian Psychological Society, and of course, thank you also to Midan. Live rin po tayo ngayon sa mga pages nila at ng Holy Angel University Communicators League. Maraming salamat po sa pag-collaborate for this episode.
Okay, and don't forget, we can continue this conversation online. So habang nangyayari itong show na to, simultaneously you can share your thoughts online or in the chat room that's here in the Zoom room with us. And if you're sharing online, please use the hashtag #CourageOn para makita namin kung ano yung mga insights nyo or what are your thoughts and ideas about the topic that we're gonna talk about today. So syempre, today, as you saw sa mga promo natin, today, ang discussion natin ay tungkol sa pagpalaganap ng disinformation or the spread of disinformation online.
And yes, Happy, tayo nga ngayon ay nasa kalagitnaan na ng November at mahigit 6 na buwan na lamang bago po ang napakahalagang halalan sa darating na Mayo. At syempre alam natin na magiging very challenging po ang pandemya nito, ang halalan na ito dahil pa rin sa ongoing na COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, it's interesting, Jules, that you mentioned pandemic because other than a pandemic, meron rin nagaganap na infodemic or ang ating tinatawag na ang pagkalat ng disinformation or infodemic na nangyayari online. And ang impact nito ay lalo pang nagpapalaganap ng galit at humahati sa mga Pilipino online. So, alam mo yun, ang daming mga angry reacts na nangyayari, maraming nag-aaway online. And this is partially also because of disinformation. And not only that, ang mga established institutions that we have relied on as reliable sources of information, like the media, syempre, have suffered rin because of disinformation or propaganda or mga paninira na nangyayari sa media ngayon. So yan rin ang impact ng disinformation na nangyayari ngayon. Jules?
Yes, totoo yan, Happy. At nabanggit mo nga, no, itong loss of trust ng ating mga kababayan sa media. And dahil sa attacks ng mga trolls na ito, nahihirapan yung ating mga kapwa journalists na gawin ng maayos yung kanilang trabaho upang ipalaganap yung katotohanan. Kasi alam mo, Happy, kapag pinag-uusapan yung katotohanan ngayon, meron ng version mo yan of truth. Iba yung version of truth ko. May mga ganong narratives na which hindi dapat ganon yung sitwasyon.
Ang opinion, sometimes akala ng mga tao na truth na yon, pero opinion lang talaga siya. So, importante rin i-mention natin, Jules, na hindi lang media ang apektado dito sa disinformation, pati ang mga advocates or mga advocacy groups who push to try and improve their community, sila rin naaapekto, pati rin ang mga ordinaryong Pilipino na alam mo yun, dati madaling bagay ang makipag-usap sa isang tao at ngayon parang ang hirap na makipag-usap sa tao kasi hindi mo alam kung ano ang pinaniniwalaan niya at alam mo yun, wala tayong basis of truth, wala tayong shared reality na nagaganap, kaya parang mahirap na, alam mo, marami akong nami-meet na tao na parang hindi na nila alam kung paano makipag-usap at natatakot sila na baka if they say something, baka ma-attack sila, 'di ba? Dahil marami rin mga trolls online na nag-a-attack or nagbubuli ng mga tao na nag-share ng mga ideas nila. So, today, yung disinformation na ito, hindi lang siya sa Pilipinas nangyayari. This is happening all over the world. So I'm here joining from Sydney and in Australia. Marami rin disinformation ang kumakalat dito. Pero don't worry, there are groups that are trying to push back on disinformation, both in the Philippines and in many parts of the world globally. This is a global movement and a local movement. Many people are pushing back and finding ways to stop disinformation.
Correct, Happy. Kaya naman ngayong hapon, makakasama natin ang iba't ibang representatives ng ating community upang ibahagi kung paano sila naaapektuhan sa paglaganap ng false claims at trolls sa social media.
At sa ikalawang bahagi naman ng ating programa, makakasama natin ang mga individual or mga grupo na nagsimula ng kanilang mga initiative upang labanan ang disinformation, hindi lamang sa kanilang mga localities, but also in the global context as well.
Alam mo, Happy, very important ang discussion this afternoon, no? Kasi marami ang gumagamit ngayon ng social media para i-promote ang kanilang mga kandidato at yung mga plataforma rin nila, dahil lalo na papalapit na nga ang eleksyon at nasa gitna pa rin tayo ng pandemic.
Yes, so very crucial ito kasi itong magiging online, the online sphere is really where all the discussions will happen tungkol sa election. So, para sa mga kasama natin dito, meron ba kayong nakita na mga false claims sa social media or sa mga chat groups? Baka meron kayong mga tito o tita or family members sa mga group chat ninyo? Ano bang nagsha-share ba sila ng mga fake news? Anong nakikita ninyo? And more importantly, anong ginagawa ninyo kapag meron kayong nakikitang mga false claims? So you might want to share some of those stories that you encountered fake news and what you did about that. You can share that in our chat group here in the Zoom room, or you can also share it online using the hashtag #CourageOn.
All right. Thank you so much, Happy. Once again, that's #CourageOn. Lahat po kayo kasama po dito sa ating discussion this afternoon. Kaya naman po, simulan na po natin ang ating diskusyon. See you later, Happy. Okay, so sa ating first segment, tatalakayin po natin ang mga karanasan ng ating mga guests sa disinformation at mga pag-atake ng online trolls. Kaya naman bago tayo magsimula, gusto ko rin po pasalamatan ang mga speakers natin today for spending your Saturday afternoon with us. So for this first segment, we'll be having the Secretary General of Karapatan. Let's welcome Christina Palabay. Ma'am Tinay, magandang hapon.
Magandang hapon sa ating lahat.
Thank you po. And we also have the researcher writer of Rappler, Michelle Abad. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Jules. Thanks for having me.
Ayan, si Michelle, very active yan sa TikTok ng Rappler para syempre for the other audience natin sa TikTok. And later on, I think we also have Melanie Ferranil, the National Secretariat of the College Editors Guild of the Philippines, or CEGP. She's here. Hello, hi Melanie. Okay, I think hindi ata lumulusot yung audio, no, at the moment, pero we'll try to check later kung paano natin masosolusyonan yan. Pero in any case, let's begin with our discussion. Disinformation. So it's been there since social media started. But I remember nung beginning ng social media, mga 2010s, yung narrative pa is social media for social good. Tas eventually, na-weaponize na siya, no? Na kumbaga parang nagagamit yung currency of trust na dito ay kung gaano karami yung likes, yung shares, etc. So ganun na parang yung usapin. So from your own experiences, Ma'am Tinay as human rights defender, Michelle as a media practitioner, and Melanie, ano yung karanasan ninyo sa disinformation at itong mga organized attacks ng mga trolls? Paano ito nakakaapekto sa inyong trabaho? Ma'am Tinay, sa inyo po.
Well, yung sa amin, Jules, bago pa naman yung 2016 elections, there have been cases na, no, ng mga iba't ibang forms ng disinformation. But the first time we looked at it was, of course, during the 2016 elections, nung tumakbong Vice President si Bongbong Marcos. No? And there were not like this kind of disinformation, but meron ng mga iba't ibang mga falsehoods, no, na ipinapalaganap noon, like hindi nagnakaw yung mga Marcoses, maganda yung buhay ng martial law, wala namang pinatay, o nasaktan noong panahon ng martial law, those kinds of stuff. But ang tingin ko na barrage nung disinformation was, in our experience as human rights advocates, was when the war on drugs started. And then when victims in the war on drugs were being portrayed as plain criminals, dregs of society, tapos yung binabaluktot na yung karapatang pantao. So nagsimula doon, tapos hanggang sa kumbaga ang term na ginagamit namin, tinotokhang na yung hindi lang yung tao, kundi yung katotohanan. Yung katotohanan may pinatay, yung katotohanan hindi nanlaban, yung katotohanan pati yung mga inosente ay napapaslang. That was just in the first 2 months of the Duterte administration. And then it came to us, the messengers, kumbaga, yung mga nag-document o kaya yung mga nag-monitor ng mga kaso, pumunta na sa civil society. So that's when the threats started, even perhaps members of the media or those who are criticizing the conduct of the drug war. For the earliest time that I remembered was there were a barrage of online messages saying na dapat pugutan ako ng ulo, was when after President Duterte said that these human rights people should be beheaded. I remember that's in September 2017. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's a chilling effect, kasi pupugutan ka kaya ng ulo, di ba? I mean, anyone, even if these are people online, and then after that, the threats became our reality. I mean, it's not just about being told that you'll be beheaded, but there are other threats as well. There are calls, there are surveillance, and then we have our friends killed. So it's really disinformation is not just left to the cyberspace.
Right.
Ang mas malala, nagiging incitement platform siya to incite violence, and there are real people getting hurt.
Okay. Thanks, Ma'am Tinay. Kay Michelle naman, Michelle as a journalist and susundan to ni Melanie as a student journalist naman, paano nakakaapekto itong disinformation at yung mga trolls? And Michelle, ikaw may recent experience ka rin dyan.
Jules, sige, siguro bigay ako ng konting context kasi ako galing ako sa research team and ka-team ko yung mga fact-checkers natin. Ako mismo hindi ako fact-checker pero nakikita ko yung mga trabaho na ginagawa nila. Pansin ko nung bago mag-election season, nakita ko na yung mga fact-check nila is mga puro COVID, tapos meron din yung mga marami din na political disinformation. Pero nung may election period na at malakas na yung reporting ng Rappler pagdating dito sa election. Yung mahirap was yung nagiging part na rin ng Rappler sa disinformation campaign. Kagaya nung yung sa presidential survey natin, 'di ba, naglabas tayo ng poll sa Facebook ng magpili kayo ng reaction na gusto niyong presidente. Tapos nagkaroon ng allegations from a certain camp na nagmanipulate tayo ng reactions doon para maglumang daw ang isang other candidate. And then, ayun, parang mahirap yun kasi sobrang nag-viral yun. Sabi mo nga kanina na medyo gumagawa din ako ng mga TikTok for Rappler. And part of my work for that is nag-research din ako ng atmosphere sa TikTok, kung paano ba yung gumawa ng mga TikTok yung mga nag-viral para mas mapag-improve natin yung storytelling natin sa TikTok. And kapag nag-search ka ng Rappler, talagang makikita mo yung mga lies about Rappler na manipulated daw natin yung survey na yun. And what makes it worse is that it was really even included in the official channels. Like there was a press release from Bongbong Marcos himself that said that we manipulated the survey as if it was really a fact, that it was a proven fact. And then, the camps really latch onto that. And yun yung mahirap dun kasi hindi hindi tayo gumagawa ng fact check about Rappler kapag Rappler na yung involved in the disinformation kasi it would be a conflict of interest. So diba, that gives us another dilemma of what do we do if we're the ones that are involved in the disinformation when we're supposed to be combating disinformation about other things, diba? So yeah, that's on the level of the team that I'm working with. No, I'm with the fact checkers. Sa akin naman personally, this happened very recently, around 2 weeks ago. May kumalat na screenshot of this chat that I had with an OFW. Kasi ako, my beat is I cover overseas Filipinos. And then 2 weeks ago, I was working on in October, I was working on a story about the overseas voting registration. And then it's very hard to cover overseas Filipinos when you're in the Philippines. Kasi diba yung mga sources mo is nasa abroad sila. So wala ka talagang, usually wala ka talagang magiging source of information kundi mag-search ka sa Facebook or kung wala kang referral, diba? So ang ginawa ko noon was I was looking for a case study sa mga Facebook post ng consulate sa Dubai. And then may nakita akong tao doon na naghahanap ng help. Kasi parang sabi niya, hindi po yata ako aabot sa registration deadline. So this story is not political at all. We just wanted to tell the story about how difficult it is for overseas Filipinos to register to vote. And then so nag-message ako sa kanya, sabi ko, hello, I'm Michelle from Rappler. I'm working on this story. I just wanted to know if you were able to register and how was your experience? And then ang reply sa akin ng OFW na yun is game daw siya magpa-interview pero sa akin daw wag na daw ako mag-register kasi BBM kami all the way, ganyan. And then so medyo na ako at that point, deadline na ako, so I didn't entertain that conversation anymore. So I left it at that. More or less. And then the next week, may lumabas na fake screenshot, fake chat daw, na parang sabi ko, oh, I'm sorry if I was not able to, parang include you in our Lenny for President campaign. Basta basically, nangangampanya daw ako sa campaign ni VP Lenny Robredo, which is obviously fake. And kitang-kita naman sa screenshot ng chat na hindi ako yun. But then inalat yun, and then ayun, parang Rappler had to come out with a statement na hindi talaga ako yun. What's scary was that I found out because it was sent to us by our social media team, who it was sent to them by a reader that said, is she from Rappler? Is she really from Rappler? So that means naniwala siya dun sa fake chat. Yun yung nakakatakot eh. So parang yun, it's very, very scary now, especially now that we're working in an online setup now, working remotely tayo. And na pwedeng ganito na you're just doing your job, you're just chatting somebody, tapos pwedeng ma-involve ka na kaagad sa disinformation.
Mm-hmm. So talagang yung pinaka-goal dito, Michelle, no, yung yurakin yung tiwala o yung trust sa mga institutions. So yan yung way nila to really destroy these institutions na nagde-deliver supposedly ng facts. Okay, ngayon naman punta tayo sa student side naman. Melanie is here. I think audio natin siya maririnig. Melanie, from your side naman as a student journalist, paano nakakaapekto ang disinformation sa inyo?
Hello, good afternoon. So audio lang ako for today maybe, but I'll still try later. So sa CGP naman as an organization, well basically along different youth organizations like KPL, NUSP, LFS, Anak Bayan, and the like. Kapag may mga like militant releases from one or to another na syempre most of the time ay hinahead ng CGP, na mga bare minimum call-outs lang for human rights like safe reopening of schools, funding of campus publications, yung ouster before pero naging termination, critics sa mga social phenomena like killings, war on drugs, palpries. Ang pinaka-notion ng disinformation na nare-receive namin along sa youth orgs ay syempre yung red tagging. Super continuous siya. Minsan inahead pa siya ng different government entities, like for example yung sa NSPC webinars na nangyari noon na sinabi na ang CEGP along with other youth orgs ay front ng CPP-NPA organizations. So ayun, sa CEGP naman as an organization itself, we've been constantly monitoring different campus press freedom violations in the tertiary level. So yung critic namin, yung Philippines noon ay one of the freest press in the Asia. Pero as of now, parang nagkakaroon ng deja vu sa nung former suppressed state under the late dictator Marcos. So may pagsasilence sa critics, yung censorship, at syempre yung killings na yun yung parang basically nagde-define sa media situation natin today. So yung intimidation, media intimidation, hindi lang siya nag-a-apply lang sa mainstream tsaka sa alternative media like of course sa Rappler, sa ABS, yung A-Bias, CBN, and sa mga huge or giants na media. Pero sa ngayon meron ding intimidation na kinakaharap yung mga student publications, yung mga campus press naging subject ng repression, suppression, especially dun sa form ng school administration's manipulation na nag-intensify pa dahil dun sa Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act o yung Free Higher Education Law. So basically, almost 200 na student publications yung nasa brink ng pagde-defund. So kapag sinabi namang defunding, related siya dun sa implementing rules and guidelines na maging non-mandatory yung, if not totally, yung pag-collect ng student publication fees. So, pero in fact, yung student publication fee ay implemented na last fiscal year pa. So, yung mga public higher institutions stop collecting student publication fees from its students. Tapos, ayun, alarming dyan ay yung law was aimed at giving students a free college education ay ginagamit as a way for school administrations to control campus journalists. So, basically, nare-relate naman siya sa disinformation kasi dahil sa repression na yun, nagkakaroon ng parang rise ng extremist values sa mga estudyante, especially ngayong sa gitna ng pandemya. So, dahil natatakot yung mga student publications na maging militant enough, na syempre student publication yung parang closest na makapag-mobilize and makapag-organize ng mga students. So, disinformation is really inevitable sa mga estudyante natin.
Okay,
So, ayun
thank
naman
you.
yung track for Siege.
Right. Maraming salamat, Melanie. No? So, in total, if I am going to summarize the context from Ma'am Tinay's side, from Michelle's, and from Melanie's, talagang these operations, yung pinaka-goal niya ay talagang to intimidate, di ba? These groups to do their work, to do their job, to defend human rights, to expose the truth, and to fight for the truth, basically. Di ba? Kasi yun nga sinasabi nila na we're in a battle for truth right now kasi parang wala tayong shared reality. So yun yung ginagawa natin. We're doing our job. So from the context right now, the main question is, how do we deal with this information? Itong mga fake news na to, do we engage with them or do we just reject these claims by not giving attention to these claims? So ano ang thoughts nyo dito, Ma'am Tinay, Michelle, and Melanie?
Well, nung simula, pumapatol ka rin eh. Kasi parang sabi nga nila, tao ka rin. Di ba? Patulera ka rin. But later on, we studied ano nga itong social media, what is this monster called social media. Akala natin noon, ano lang, dito, it's a means to connect with friends, right? But it has become such a big machine already. So, we learned our way around it then. Una, you have to fight lies and disinformation with facts. You can never go wrong with facts and the truth. At yun, masasabi natin yon in so many ways. I mean, if you're a third person speaking for another person, perhaps medyo second hand na yun. No? Pero pag pinagsasalita natin, for example, kami, kapag sinasabi namin, ina-encourage namin yung mga victims to recount their experience, I mean, nobody can, break down your realities for you. Diba? Naranasan mo yun, sinabi mo yon, nangyari yun sa pamilya mo. Nandun ka nung nangyari yung insidente. Mahirap ang buhay mo kasi kumakalam ang sikmura mo. I mean, these are realities na hindi pwedeng tawag doon. Paano mo maiimbento ang pagkalam ng sikmura? Ipapanggap ka, nagutom ka, kung talagang gutom ka. At 52 pesos lang ang kinikita ng tatay mo o nanay mo sa isang araw. I mean, so mahalaga na sa pagbibigay natin ng storya, we give face to the stories, no? To the realities that we face. Of course, there are risks. Of course, there are downsides to it. But I think that's the thing. We have to fight these lies and disinformation with the truth because that's what we have, no? And that's where we will win, this battle. At the same time, it also takes a lot of paliwanagan. Hindi yan nawawala. No, talagang kailangan nagtsatsaga tayo doon sa mga tao na totoong tao, no? Na tingin natin napapaliwanagan. Ako yung mga magulang ko, my God, magulang ko na yun, ha? Palibasa kasi galing sa norte and they receive news from various sources, di ba? So, nagulat ako, I think it was in 2017, my mother and my father was telling, ang ano naman pala nito ni Duterte. Kasi, winawalis niya yung mga salot sa lipunan tulad ng mga drug addicts. Sabi ko, ha? Paano nangyari yan? Saan mo yan nakukuha, ma? So, pinakita niya sa akin yung mga sites. And then I showed her I pointed the direction to legitimate media sources. Tapos, binigbigay ako ng mga babasahin. Nagbigay din ako ng iba't ibang mga information. Kumbaga, hindi ito cut and dried. Not everything is cut and dried. And as they say, history is something we have to fight for. Diba? History is something that kailangan paulit-ulit nating nire-relive. No? Dahil ito nga yung mas madalas na baluktutin.
Maraming salamat, Ma'am Tinay, no? Lalo na dun sa nabanggit nyo na we need to humanize the stories, lalo na yung mga numbers kasi parang nanonormalize yung mga, kunwari yung mga bilang ng mga napatay dahil sa EJ case or itong mga nasawi dahil sa COVID. Parang mere numbers na lang sila. So it's very important na battle of narratives kasi ito eh. So we need to put a human face. And it's also interesting that you mentioned about the situations in families, di ba? Minsan frustrated tayo, how do we deal with this information? Sometimes we just really need to check our backyards eh. 'Di ba doon sa bahay natin mismo kung mismong mga magulang natin o itong mga relatives natin yung nagiging biktima. Simulan natin doon kung paano natin tutugunan. Thank you, Ma'am Tinay. Michelle, bahagi ng trabaho natin sa Rappler, yung pag-address sa disinformation by fact-checking them basically. But what do you think are the reasons kung bakit parang prone to abuse or manipulation yung ilang mga netizens pagdating sa disinformation?
Siguro start ko yung sagot ko by quoting our boss, Maria Ressa. Kasi I think I've heard this like 100 times in her interviews na para lagi niyang sinasabi na if you say a lie again and again and again, it will eventually become the truth. So unfortunately, yung mga lies talagang mas mabilis talaga yun kumalat kaysa ang katotohanan. But for us as media practitioners, it's really just a matter of patience and perseverance and couraging on, kasi parang yung fact checks namin, it's really one at a time. It's one lie at a time, one false claim at a time. But I think that this really does go a long way. I mean, yung mga priority na chine-check ng fact-checking team namin is yung mga nagva-viral na. So kapag nakita na ng mga tao yung isang fact-check claim sa Facebook na viral na, makikita na kaagad nila na this is false information, see why. But then at the same time, apart from just going after yung mga viral na content, maganda rin kung pangunahan na natin. So yung isang strategy sa research team na ginagawa namin is we always like to put out explainers first para parang hindi siya reactive kasi minsan ganun magsulat yung mga media parang reactive na that could be disadvantages in a sense na kumalat ng false information tapos ngayon lang tayo magpapaliwanag. maganda kung yung media ang gagawin natin is pangunahin na natin. Sabihin na natin kaagad yung truth para even if we have, yung pessimistic thought na hindi siya kakalat ng kasing bilis ng lie, naunahan na natin Naunahan na natin with the truth.
Thank you, Michelle. For Melanie, from the students side, no, sa mga students ngayon, lalo na from different parts of the Philippines, kasi 'di ba coalition din ng CEGP of different student papers. Ano yung pananaw nyo kung bakit mas mabilis manipulate or prone to abuse itong ilang netizens sa social media?
Hello. Sa pananaw naman namin, mabilis na parang ma-abuse for disinformation yung basically majority sa social media kasi syempre talamak rin yung mga different fake news sites, especially sa Facebook page. Sobrang daming mga trolls pages, ganyan. Pero what we do naman to counter those, especially sa side naman ng student publications, hindi rin ma-ensure na yung mga na-organize na, mga na-engage na mga student publications ay merong lahat na progressive news releases. So sa amin, nakakapag-set kami ng parang unifying tone sa mga news releases na mas maging pro-people, pro-democratic, and syempre scientific and nationalist. In terms sa pag-host ng mga educational discussions, ganyan yung ATAEP program namin, Antonio Tagamulila Educational Program. So, ayun yung ginagawa namin for counter. Tapos, one thing pa ay syempre, kinokolate namin lahat ng mga violations, and recently nakapag-file kami sa CHED ng violations. So, ayun. Isa pa pala, nasabi rin na kaya most of the time, parang mas accessible din sa parang majority ng populace yung disinformation, mga fake news, dahil ayun yung free Facebook na na parang basta yung free Facebook. So yung sa mga tao kasi madalas 'di ba, privilege naman talaga yung internet connection and such. So yung free Facebook, parang yung mga tao mas nakakabasa sila ng mga status lang or yung mga post na walang bongga na PubMat. So ayun lang naman.
Magandang perspective yun, Melanie, no? Yung accessibility of the platform na minsan because of free Facebook, limited lang yung content na nakukuha nila. So kung ano yung nasagap nila based from the limitations of their data, yun na yung kabuuan ng pinaniniwalaan nila. But I have another very interesting question, no, to our panelists right now. Kasi kapag minsan pag pinag-uusapan yung fighting for human rights, fighting for press freedom, fighting disinformation, parang hindi siya ganoon ka-relatable agad sa lahat ng mga kababayan natin. Kasi may other gut issues pa silang mas inaalala, or yung iba naman mas matingkad yung propaganda ng ibang mga narratives, kaya mas yun yung pinaniniwalaan nila. So moving forward, how do we make this calls more relatable to other people? Ma'am Tinay.
Well, I think we should start from where we should start, on what common grounds do we have. Halimbawa, ako practical lang sa nanay ko. Yung nanay ko very religious, no? So we started off sabi ko, huy, magbabasa ka niyang ganyang mga pages, tapos sinasabi dyan, dapat patayin yung mga is that Christian? Or yung magsisimula kayo doon no? Tapos, you make connections between the right to life, tapos yung right to a dignified life. Kasi hindi ka naman mabubuhay. Hindi pwedeng buhay ka lang. Diba? Dapat meron laman ng tiyan mo, or your rights to decent housing, to living wages, to social protection, all of these are your rights. No? So, hindi mo siya binibreak down. Kumbaga, minsan we have the tendency na pag civil and political rights at saka economic and social, magkakahiwalay yan, di ba? Pag kinausap mo ang tao sa lansangan, pag kinausap mo si manong driver ng sa tricycle, o kahit sino, magulang mo, hindi mo hindi yan yung maggagawa sa isang usapan lang. Ako makulit ako sa nanay ko hanggang sa pagkatapos namin mag-usap, papadala mo pa siya ng BPM mo pa siya ng kung ano-ano. Dinedeluge ko din talaga siya. So doon talaga kailangan ng parang perseverance on our part, patience, no? Hindi uubra dito yung bardagulan. No? Hindi uubra dito yung ang sagot mo na lang, you'll be the monster na that you hate, di ba? Ang kailangan dito ay yung if you believe doon sa katotohanan na ipinaglalaban natin, no, yun ang inilalahat mo, and you reflect, no, kung ano yung klase ng kabutihan sa tao, kabutihan sa paggobyerno na kinakailangan ng ating bansa. Easier said than done, sinasabi ko rin yan. Pero for me, it's also a learning experience. No? Hindi lang to parang tawag dito dahil human rights activist ako. No? Hindi. It's also an experience in interacting with people. It's also an experience in, in making people know kung ano yung kinakailangan natin sa kasalukuyan at yung ways forward natin. Kailangan mag-establish tayo ng commonalities dahil I think we have more commonalities than our differences. At yun ang matinding paniniwala ko, lalo na sa sitwasyong ganito na nasa ilalim tayo ng isang pandemya.
Thank you, Ma'am Tina. Maganda yung nabanggit yung we have more commonalities more than our differences, no? So, pwede natin pang hugutan yon ng lakas given na very divisive usually ang election. So, yun yung pang hugutan natin ng lakas. At yung pasensya, kasi yung change naman, hindi naman yan overnight lang bigla mangyayari. Minsan, it takes a process to convince someone to really believe na this is the proper way pala on understanding information. Okay, Michelle, from your end, how do we make our advocacies, fact-checking as a culture or maybe to make it more relatable to everyone?
Sa akin naman, feeling ko hindi siya mutually exclusive, no? Parang hindi dapat tingnan yung as two different things, yung disinformation tsaka yung mga real life issues na nangyayari sa atin. Kasi yung disinformation hindi lang siya abstract concept eh. It really spills into the realities of people. For example, yung disinformation about martial law na yung mga Marcos apologists at yung mga martial law apologists, yung sinasabi nila is usually okay naman kami ng martial law, parang mas okay nga doon kasi disiplinado yung mga tao and safe lang kami sa bahay. Kung hindi ka pasaway, hindi ka dapat matakot. Pero okay, that's your truth. Pero paano naman yung truth ng ibang tao? Na because of, these lies and because of these misconceptions about martial law, parang yung ibang tao na rape, yung ibang tao na torture. So paano naman yung katotohanan nila? Paano naman yung truth nila? So parang feeling ko dapat tingnan natin yung disinformation not as something up in the air, but something that really affects us all. Yung sa disinformation na lumaganap nung campaign ni President Rodrigo Duterte noong 2015, 2016 pa, that led to the EJ case that we saw in 2016, 2017. So I think for me, it's really trying to get rid of that line na talaga magkaiba talaga yun. And part of that advocacy is making sure that we do tell our stories and humanize the stories that we have. That goes back to, yung putting a face on these issues kasi bukod sa pagiging numbers and statistics na mga nakikita natin sa balita tungkol sa EJ case, there are real people behind these things. So kapag sinabi ng isang tao na kasinungalingan yan, lagyan mo ng mukha ang kwento. At feeling ko yun yung it's going to be a way for everybody to really understand that there are different truths, or rather, everybody has their own truth and we should listen to everybody.
Thank you, Michelle, for that statement. No? How about for Melanie naman, from the side of students? Paano natin gagawing mas relatable to all the students? Kasi napakalakas na puwersa ng kabataan, ng sektor ng kabataan. And ang dami, ang laking actually chunk ng mga voters natin for 2022 ay mula sa hanay ng kabataan. So paano natin gagawing mas relatable itong mga advocacies for everyone beyond our circles?
Okay, so mag-start ako sa parang pinaka-general aspect na, ayun, tama si Miss Tinay. So, parang i-connect natin sa mga pre-existing na knowledge, morals, values, at syempre experiences ng mga tao. So, for example, yung politics naman, yun na talaga yung life natin, di ba? So, majority sa ating mga Pilipino ay Katoliko. At sa religion, may politics din syempre. So, kaya magandang na i-relate yung mga social phenomena, mga issues sa ating faith tsaka traditions. Yung mga most sa youth, for example, yung mga nasa probinsya, mas nag-adhere pa rin sila sa religion, syempre yung pagiging uh, conservative ng political culture, ganyan. So, for example, sa war on drugs, pwedeng sabihin na dapat we care for life, so more than anything. So, ayun, dun pa lang sa aspect ng life, parang maganda na maanohan na agad ng human rights after that. So, doon naman sa pre-existing experiences. So, for example, kaya nakakapag community building and organizing ay dahil syempre meron tayong shared struggles. So, sa aming mga estudyante, namomobilize kami, na-agitate sa mga experiences namin, especially ngayong pandemic. So, gaano ba naging kadamot sa mga mahihirap yung makapag-aral, yung mga out-of-school youth, paano naging depressing yung mental health conditions, ganyan. So, we can deepen yung mga pre-existing na experience sa pagtingin at pagkritik kung paano ba itong mga struggles na to ina-enable ng Duterte regime, ng government, ganyan, at kung paano siya connected dun sa mas malaking issue pa, for example, neoliberal globalization at monopoly capitalism.
Okay. Ayan. So thank you so much, Melanie. No? Siguro on the top line on this question, the challenge for advocates for human rights, for press freedom, for any specific advocacy is really to bridge the gap, 'di ba? Kasi minsan maybe we're just using jargons na yung sariling circles lang natin nakakaunawa. So we really need to address those gaps para mas maidikit natin 'tong mga issues na ito sa pinagdadaanan nila sa pang-araw-araw. Okay, so as we wrap up this first segment, no, I think we always ask this to all our segments. Kahit na sobrang threats na pinagdadaanan or nakukuha natin, si Ma'am Tinay, nakakuha ng pupugutan ka ng ulo na threat, di ba? So, sinong hindi matatakot doon? So, saan nyo hinuhugot yung tapang ninyo to keep doing what you're doing in your jobs? Ma'am Tinay, simulan natin sa inyo.
Well, Jules, surprisingly, kasi most of the time when we listen to victims, ang marami kang emotions no, na mararamdaman. Empathy, di ba? O kaya takot din because, the things that happen to them may happen to you, or, those kinds of feelings pag nakikinig ka ng storya na katulad nun. But fortunately for me, I took them all as a challenge sa akin, no? Na parang kung sila na ganito yung kinaharap, kung yung mga taong who have less than what I have, no, ay nagpupursige para mabuhay, nagpupursige para iparinig yung kanilang mga pagtingin tungkol sa mga bagay-bagay, bakit hindi ko kayang gawin yon? No? So, and that challenges me even more, no, para ipagpatuloy, no, yung ginagawa ko at mag-earn din ng patience. No? At saka tawag dito, ako kasi firm believer din ako no, na yung online spaces, there are many realities that can be created because this is a virtual space, no, parang free market. When you go to real life situations, yun tingin ko ang mas mahalaga kasi doon natin malalaman kung ano yung tunay na sitwasyon, kung ano yung tunay na kalagayan, at kung ano yung dapat nating gawin. And in my experience, that has always driven me, to continue to look at the situations ng mga kababayan na mas nakakaranas ng kahirapan at saka ng iba't ibang paglabag sa karapatang pantao, at sa kanila ako nakakuha ng inspirasyon para ipagpatuloy ito at tapang din. Kaya yun po, beyond online spaces, we should always go to the people who have been violated most, and there we will learn the truths about not only our own experiences, but the bigger experiences outside of our, spaces.
Correct. Thank you so much, Ma'am Tinay, for doing what you're doing with Karapatan and all the other human rights defenders. Kaisa niyo po kami sa lahat ng ginagawa ninyo. On your part naman, Michelle, that narrative, no, what you experienced, it trended online din. How did that affect you? And yung impact na yun sa iyo, bakit patuloy ka pa ring ginagawa? Patuloy mo pa rin ginagawa yung mga ginagawa natin sa Rappler on fact-checking different kinds of disinformation?
Yung first reaction ko parang syempre parang natawa ako kasi yung English nung next screenshot, yung fake chat talaga was it was so unbelievable. But then parang after that initial reaction, you take a step back tapos ma-realize mo kung gaano talaga siya nakatakot. Diba? It's so scary that, just this simple exchange can turn into something like this, can turn into a lie. But then, kung saan ako humuhugot ng lakas, on the most immediate level, yung Rappler, very, very good support system. Alam mo yan, Jules, na talagang sinusupport natin ang isa't isa. And kumukuha talaga tayo ng lakas sa ating boss na si Maria, diba? And it's always a pleasure to know that we are working for something that is bigger than all of us. It's humbling to know that we're part of that. And yung recent na Nobel Peace Prize ni Maria was really another affirmation that kahit natakot na tayo, there are people who believe in us. And apart from yung sa media, sa Rappler itself, I think yung media as a whole, yung free independent media is also supporting each other. Like nung ABS-CBN shutdown, we were also supporting, all of the free independent media was supporting that and supporting ABS-CBN rather. And then apart from yung solidarity within the free independent media, I think kumukuha din tayo ng lakas dun sa mga sources natin and dun sa mga people whose stories we're telling. Diba? Kasi at the end of the day, para saan ba itong ginagawa natin? Diba? Para sa katotohanan, para sa mga stories ng people on the ground, the people that are oppressed, the people that are victim to human rights abuses, to, for example, this administration or corporate oppression, diba? We come up with these stories to tell about these types of issues so that we can perhaps, if not make direct change, we can prompt change. And so dun tayo umaase, parang dun tayo kumakapit na by writing these things and being perseverance in our storytelling, that we can somehow prompt change for less oppression and more human rights upholding in our country.
Totoo yun, Michelle, no? Yung sinasabi mo na yung takot, yung impact ng mga fake news, ng mga disinformation, talagang ma-intimidate ka na parang mapapaisip ka na ba't ko pa ba ginagawa to kung ito nagiging effect sa mental health ko, 'di ba, yung anxiety na bibigay sa atin. Pero beyond pa actually doon sa internal support na nakukuha natin from our colleagues, ibang klase yung impact ng collective action na you feel na you're not only alone in this battle kasi may iba't ibang organizations and even other individuals throwing support na we are on the same page in the battle of truth. So thank you so much, Michelle, for all your efforts sa mga ginagawa natin sa Rappler. Now lastly, let's proceed to Melanie. No? Kayo yung up and coming, kayo yung mga susunod na mga media practitioners na lalabas talaga. Actually lumalabas na kayo pero kayo yung susunod na hawak ng leadership sa iba't ibang sectors. So despite all the threats of red tagging, of intimidating your student papers, keso libre naman daw ang edukasyon kaya wag labanan ang gobyerno, mga ganong klaseng iba't ibang mga threats, paano kayo humuhugot pa? Saan kayo humuhugot pa ng lakas para gawin yung ginagawa ninyo?
Sa amin, parang unexplainable talaga yung process ng pagiging consistent and pagiging sobrang militant every now and then. Siyempre nakakapagod, especially kapag sarili mo lang yung iisipin mo. Pero sa amin naman, parang sa aming mga kabataan, syempre fresh pa yung ganitong ideolohiya. Sobrang nakaka-agitate pa rin. Talagang yung agitation, talagang consistent siya, di ba? Kahit, alam mo yun. So, ayun, sa mga countless discussion kung bakit kailangan bakahin yung liberalismo, paano yung mga specific jargons na to, like yung liberalism nga, capitalism, neoliberalism, ganyan, paano siya connected talaga sa realities at sa wide social setting and hindi lang siya parang na-abridge lang sa book, ganyan. For example din, nakakapagpatuloy din syempre sa mga experiences na rin, yung mga integration sa mga balita na ibinabalita namin, yung high emotions every now and then. At last siguro yung nagpapatuloy syempre out of the necessity kasi sobrang grabe yung nangyayari ngayon and parang talagang parang maisip mo rin as a Catholic na rin na parang it's a sin na parang manahimik ka na lang. So ayun, nagpapatuloy din out of morals, out of the necessity.
Okay, thank you so much, Melanie. No? So you're able to connect yung instances, yung mga situation na nangyari on the ground because of different factors and even in the cultural sense. So thank you so much for also your courage no, na ginagawa ninyo sa CEGP. Magpatuloy sana yan. So maraming salamat po for this very meaningful discussion. Nakasama po natin ang Secretary General ng Karapatan, Ms. Cristina Palabay. Ma'am Tinay, thank you so much. You also have the researcher, writer of Rappler, Michelle Abad, and of course, from the National Secretariat of the College Editors Guild of the Philippines, Melanie Joy Ferranil. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay po kayong tatlo. Alright, so ngayon po, thank you so much. Sa mga viewers po natin sa Courage On, that ends our first segment for Courage On. Now let's call back Happy to join me on screen. Happy.
Hi, Jules. Hello.
Hey.
Thank you. Super insightful ang discussion nyo. I think it's very important for us to hear and to see the faces behind people who actually suffered because of disinformation. Kasi akala natin disinformation just happens online, pero as relayed by the different stories in the panel that you just had, parang these are very real. These affect real people, and the violence that happens online translates offline to real life, to real lives.
That's very true, Happy. No? Kaya yan nga yung isa sa mga dahilan kung ba't kailangan natin ipagpatuloy yung discussion. So para po sa mga viewers natin ngayon, ang question namin para sa inyong lahat, pwede kayong mag-chat dito sa chat box sa Zoom or sa comments sa Facebook. Paano natin malalabanan ang pagkalat ng maling impormasyon online? So isend nyo lang sa chat or mag-post kayo gamit ang hashtag na CourageOn para ma-monitor po natin ang inyong mga kasagutan.
Yes, we're actually going to be reading some of the answers sent by some of the Rappler readers and some of the participants here in our Zoom room. So let's show some of the answers that we were able to crowdsource before this show.
Okay, so simulan natin mula kay Carlo Quijano Pangilinan. Sabi niya, sa pamamagitan ng pagkukumpara ng info na nakukuha natin sa neutral news at sa actual na pangyayari/nangyayari. Yan ang sabi ni Carlo.
Okay. Tapos, meron rin sinabi ni Dorsky Farpale, binablock ko ang mga troll accounts. Masaya. Try ninyo. So,
alam mo, Happy, nung start, ginagawa ko rin, ay, hindi ko siya ginagawa, nag-engage ako. Pero lately, kung mapapansin mo lalo on Twitter na relatively this month lang ginawa, alam mo yun, parang in purpose siya ginawa yung account na yun just to troll a person. Yun yung binablock ko kasi sayang sa oras eh.
Yeah, actually that's a good tip. So you just check kailan ba na-create yung account na to, kung mga 1 week ago o di alam na kung ano yung purpose ng mga account na yun. So thank you Dorsky for that tip na i-block na lang ang mga account at para sumaya pa tayo.
Ayan, sabi naman ni Mercy Ditas Saligumba Silvero Amit, analyze the news, support it with facts. Okay, so may role basically yung readers natin. Hindi lang siya, kasi diba ang role naman ng media, Happy, hindi naman kami naglalabas ng report para ito na yung decision ninyo. Diba? The responsibility still lies with the reader na you get several sources, tas ikaw magde-decide at the end. So you need to analyze it and check ikaw kumuha ng sariling facts from those news. Pero syempre, from our end, responsibility rin naman ng media practitioners na very meticulous yung process of verification natin.
Yes, oo. Talagang we vet our sources, we check all the information. And I think most importantly also is to provide context. Kasi if we just see information separately, hindi natin nakikita kung ano ba yung context behind this, di ba? Parang when a politician says something, parang, di ba sinabi mo nung isang buwan na ganito? So I think that's really something that the media is good at doing also, is creating the context behind different statements that some public figures might make. Sabi naman ni Venson V. Mel, huwag basta-basta paniwalaan ang mga ang mga impormasyon. Alamin muna kung totoo ang chismis or balita. So, baka that is something we can ask ourselves when we see something. Chismis ba to? Balita? Or opinion? Or parang nang aasar lang? So, I think parang magandang thought process to seek every time we are faced with a piece of information. Salamat, Vanzon.
Sabi naman ni Jomi or Gomi Gisma, sabi niya, huwag sagutin ang mga trolls and loyalists. Kikita lang ang mga yan. Block niyo agad. So yan yung pananaw ni Jomi, no? Pero alam mo, happy ako, may rin ako dito, may isang perspective din ako na at least once, lalo na kung may malaking reach yung isang post or isang thread, at least engage once just to show your piece or the facts that you know. Kasi paano kung may mga bumibisita lang na wala pang decision on the matter, tapos kailangan nila ng information. Kung hindi nila nakita yung perspective mo doon, baka maniwala na lang sila doon sa mga trolls kasi marami silang nag-e-echo nung argument nila. So better to at least engage once, pero kung sa tingin mo na parang pinagdidiskatahan ka na hindi ka tinitigilan, baka kumikita na nga sila doon. So draw the line on that part. Pero at least once lang, lalo na kung may engagement siya sa ibang tao, try to engage.
Yeah. And I think that's what we call pushback. That's what pushback means na. Kasi nga, if a lie is repeated 1,000 times and becomes the truth, kailangan talagang harangin siya, talagang pushback. So, thank you, Gomi, for that. Now, this one, Herbert Corpus, he's with us right now as a participant in the Zoom room, sharing with us his thoughts. It is important that we have to work together to combat disinformation, especially that information is too instant. Now, with the various social media platforms, anyone can just easily share anything posted online. There's nothing wrong with sharing, since that is the purpose of social media platforms. But it is our responsibility to really fact check these bits of information. Wrong information believed to be true may contribute to historical revisionism. Remember that the soul of any community is its history. It is what binds us together. So very, very strong words. Thank you, Herbert, for sharing those thoughts. I echo that sentiment na kailangan meron tayong, shared history. We need to remember.
Okay, ito naman. Mula kay De La Cruz to everyone. Ito naman ang kanyang perspective. The least that we can do is to not engage to the post and report them for false information. So, yan naman yung perspective ng kasama nating si De La Cruz on disinformation.
This one is from Clementine Louise Laporga. She says, by sharing articles with credible sources and promoting fact-checking sa social media.
Okay.
So, salamat, Clementine.
Sabi naman ni Jonah Gavino, I think if we can relate to them and not be so head-on like makipagbardagulan and show them empathy while also sharing facts, then we can help them kasi tao rin naman sila na pwede nating tulungan. Actually, this is very true. Kasi yun nga, may nabasa ako kanina dito. It's very important na we need more allies and not enemies. Diba? Yun nga, parang create bridges and not walls. Kung gusto mo na mas marami pang tao na maniwala dun sa mga pinaniniwalaan mo, huwag mo sila sasabihin na, tanga ka kasi bobo ka. Diba kapag sinabi mo na yun, imbis na makinig pa sila sa'yo, parang, bahala ka dyan, diba? Hindi kita papakinggan, magkaaway na tayo, tinawag mo ako ng ganyan eh. So siguro, kailangan nga natin na intindihin, ano kaya yung background nila doon sa paniniwala nila? Ano ba yung sources muna? Ask questions first and then maybe you'll understand kung bakit ganito yung pinanghuhugutan nila ng mga impormasyon.
Oo. Sabi nga ng iba, fight with love and patience and kill with kindness, 'di ba? Yung anger nila, wag mong i-absorb ang anger. To try to take a breath and then respond calmly and with patience.
Ayan. Sobrang dami pa nagbibigay ng mga opinions lalo na dito sa Zoom. Siguro let us end here happy sinabi na i-pressure ang tech giants gaya ng Meta or Facebook and YouTube, Twitter, etc. na aksyonan ang paglaban sa disinformation. And that's very true and I agree with that. And we in Raptor are actually doing that. We engage with these tech giants para mas maging accountable sila and they need to do something in their platforms para banggain itong mga disinformation. So to all our friends who are watching right now, you can still join the conversation by tweeting or commenting your thoughts with the hashtag #CourageOn.
Okay. Jules, bago tayo magsimula sa next segment natin, importante lang rin magdagdag tayo ng konteksto kung bakit sobrang importante maghanap tayo ng paraan para matigil na tong disinformation sa social media, lalo na there's a lot at stake. Meron na tayong palapit na eleksyon. May 9 ang mangyayari next year. So, meron tayong isang video, Jules?
Yes. So, papanoorin po natin itong video editorial na ginawa ng Rappler patungkol sa delubyo ng kasinungalingan. Panoorin po natin ito.
Lumatay na naman ang lupit ng disinformation campaigns laban sa Rappler. Madaling araw ng October 23, nagtrending ang hashtag #RapplerFakeNews sa Twitter. Kasabay nito ng pagsulpot ng mga post na nag-uungkat sa dishonesty ng presidential aspirant at anak ng diktador na si Bongbong Marcos Jr. Sinabi niyang graduate siya ng Oxford University. Pero uulitin namin, hindi ito totoo. Bukod dito, marami pang ibang disinformation na sumulpot na finact-check ng Rappler nitong Oktubre. Si Bongbong Marcos daw ang nagpanukala ng free tuition bill, hindi si Bam Aquino. Hindi totoo. Si Marcos Jr. din daw ang nagpanukala ng National ID System Bill. Hindi rin totoo. Si Senador Panfilo Lacson ang nagpanukala nito. Si Marcos Jr. daw ang nag-iisang senador na hindi tumanggap ng PDAF. Hindi totoo. Dahil may PDAF si Marcos habang senador siya noong 2010 hanggang 2013. May mga nagsabi ring hinirang daw ng Estados Unidos si Presidente Rodrigo Duterte bilang isa sa 12 Global Anti-Corruption Champions. Siyempre hindi ito totoo. At huli, nanalo daw si Leni Robredo sa pagka-vice-presidente noong 2016 dahil sa pandaraya. Hindi rin totoo. Naglipa na ang Marcos revisionism sa YouTube at TikTok. Best leader in the world daw si Ferdinand Marcos at nagsimula raw ang pagbagsak ng ekonomiya matapos ang rehimen niya. Wala raw tinorture, wala raw paglabag ng karapatang pantao. Gamit ang website tool na SparkToro na pag-alaman ng Rappler na nangunguna si Bongbong Marcos sa mga politiko sa dami ng fake followers. 42.6% ng kanyang followers sa Twitter ay peke. Pero hindi lang cyberspace ang ini-invade ng mga propagandista ni Marcos. May mga balitang may dumadalaw sa mga komunidad upang makipagkwentuhan, mangudyok, magpabango at mag-organisa para sa anak ng diktador. Pero ang Facebook, tila naninindigan na hindi nito tungkuling pigilan ang disinformation.
Internal Facebook documents show the company hasn't hired enough workers needed to police abusive reports in developing countries. The documents also show artificial intelligence systems Facebook employs to root out such content aren't up to the task either.
Paano naman ang katotohanan sa eleksyon? Kamakailan, hindi na kami nakakatulog ng mahimbing. Balisa kami sa epekto ng delubyo ng kasinungalingan sa papalapit na eleksyon. Kung mananatili ang baha ng disinformation, walang matinong talakayang mangyayari sa eleksyon. Marahil sasabihin yung walang bago dyan at talaga namang walang matinong diskusyon kapag eleksyon dahil puro song and dance at artista lamang. Pero iba ang 2022. Mas may pakialam na ang taong bayan dahil marami na ang natauhang nakamamatay ang maling pagboto. Dahil ramdam na ng marami na incompetence ang nagdala sa atin sa yugtong. Pilipinas ang pinakapalpak sa pandemic resiliency sa buong mundo. Halos lahat ng mga plataporma ng mga kandidato ay umiinog sa paglaban sa pandemya.
We must learn how to live with COVID-19 and go back to work safely.
Pinaka-pressing talaga how to get the pandemic under control.
At lagpas sa pandemic response, kailangan rin natin ng pinunong mag-aakay sa bayang ito mula sa personality politics patungong reforma ng sistema. Dapat sa atin magsimula ang pagsusuri, pagkilatis, at paninindigan sa tama. Dapat magsimula sa atin ang responsableng pagboto. #WeDecide. Atin ang Pilipinas.
Okay. We decide atin ang Pilipinas. Ito po ang pinaka try natin for the upcoming elections. Kasi sa hulit-huli tayo magdedesisyon at ang Pilipinas ay hindi para sa mga angkan lang. 'Di ba? Sa atin ito, tayo magdedesisyon kung ano magiging kinabukasan natin. Pero happy, ano muna tayo? Quick updates muna tayo mula sa
Go ahead, Jules.
COMELEC. Okay, so unang-una, the Marcos's party, BBM's party adopted Sara Duterte as their vice president, and Sara filed as substitute candidate under Lakas CMD. Next point is Bato, nag-withdraw na siya from the presidency bid and says it was a party decision from PDP Laban, the Kusi faction. At ang bagong development po dito, PCOO Secretary Martin Andanares says President Duterte will be running for Vice President and he will file on Monday. And also Bongo ay nag-withdraw na rin po on the Vice Presidency and instead filed for President under the PDDS or the Federalismo ng Dugong Dakilang Samahan. Okay, ano ang summary nito, Happy? Kasi parang Duterte versus Duterte na for Vice President.
Yes, and I think, Jules, it's important to contextualize things that were said before and what actions were done. Did they do what they said they would, or are they going against the things that they said? So important to take note na Sara said that they agreed only one of them will run for a national position. President Duterte also previously said that he will not run for vice president because he listened to the overwhelming sentiment of Filipinos who disagreed with him running for the position. And Duterte also said, I don't know if you remember, na he said that he would retire from politics after Bongo filed his COC. So this was just last month when these statements were made, and yet and here we are right now with these updates, diba? So I think very important to take that into consideration. These are things, there are patterns, we see this. This also happened in the previous elections. So I think it's very important for us citizens to remain vigilant. And because really ngayon parang there's disinformation, and then there's also, these kinds of things happening. So it's important to try and see past that and really get to the bottom of things by finding out what the truth is.
Correct. So please follow Rappler's coverage. Visit rappler.com and please follow Rappler on social media to get more blow-by-blow updates.
All right. So ngayon na narinig na natin ang mga karanasan sa disinformation at troll attacks ng ating mga guest speakers kanina, nakita natin bakit malaki ang impact ng disinformation lalo na sa parating na eleksyon. Tumungo naman tayo ngayon sa ating susunod na segment na nakafocus naman sa mga ginagawa natin laban sa disinformation.
Alam mo, Happy, as mentioned kanina, upon hearing the stories of our guests in their first segment, lalong na-strengthen yung idea natin na napakahalaga ng collective action dahil hindi natin masusugpo ang disinformation individually. Kaya lahat tayo ay nagiging biktima ng disinformation at attacks na ito.
Right. And Jules, actually, mga makakasama natin today sa segment na ito ay mga representatives at individuals who led their own initiatives, kani-kanilang mga initiatives upang labanan ang disinformation, both locally and globally. So, I'll see you later, Jules. Right now, I'll call in the guests for this second segment. So, makakasama natin sa discussion na ito. With us today, zooming in from Cavite, I'd like to welcome Bernice Soriano. She is the project coordinator for the Foundation for Media Alternatives. Hello, Burns. Welcome. Joining us also from India is Shalani Joshi. She's the program director of the Midan Asia Pacific. Welcome, Shalini. And with us also joining us from Pampanga is Leslie Manalo. She's a communication instructor sa Holy Angel University. And finally, joining us from Nueva Ecija, we have our former fact-checking mentee and now a current fact-check contributor with Rappler. So, Owen Toledo. Hello, Owen. Welcome.
Hi, Happy. Good afternoon.
Hello. So good afternoon, everyone, or good morning or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you so much for joining us today. So for this segment, I think we are focusing really more on the solution. Like, so we know this information is happening. We know it has impact on people's personal lives and professional lives. And now I think we're very interested to find out about your initiatives. So I think I'll start by asking, what was it that drove you to start this initiative? Was it a particular event that happened globally, or what was it? Why was this initiative started? And what aspect of this information are you focusing on? So let's start with Bernice.
Hi, Happy. Okay,
Bernice.
so for your first question, I would say that we from the Foundation for Media Alternatives, we really look at the tech side, but the tech side intersecting with human rights. So hindi mo siya, when you look at it in that way, hindi mo matatanggal yung looking at freedom of expression. So and doon kasi nag-attack din ng disinformation or information disorder, collective term for it. So dun nag-start yon. Kasi when you look at, let's say, our social media platforms, you look also at other digital innovations and tech innovations, parang makikita mo rin yung impact. And the other question then is, ito yung impact on, let's say, our everyday lives. Paano naman on our human rights then? So yun. So that's one part of it. And that's also why we got into the, parang part of our programs is also about freedom of expression, democracy, ganyan. Kasi especially in our lives now, we're all online, we're, innovations will keep on happening. When you talk about tech, parang every second, every minute, there's something new, diba? So, ayun, kailangan din siyang tignan. Tapos, the other then question is, we focused also on how to bridge the gap. I think nabanggit to earlier, diba? That we need to bridge the gap. You have the literature, you have yung research, you have all the reports. Marami actually on this information. But the problem is, with all of these, and even given the time, like nowadays, everyone is so busy and, trying to survive, I would say. Diba? It's a pandemic and ganyan. So parang what can we do to kind of help create a hook for people to be able to, I didn't see that this information can affect me in this way. Let's just say, or what can I do? Ano yung parang quick tips, diba? Parang ganyan. So we focused on content, creating content to do this kind of work, to bridge the gap from the research, from our research work, and also from reading and researching from lots of sources. And from that to kind of also contextualize it, especially in a more local and relatable way. So yun, so that's my siguro answer to that.
Okay, thank you, Bernice. So you mentioned the intersections of how this information affected human rights, democracy, and then that's how you found yourself there and how you focus on finding different ways to reach out to people who may think that maybe this information doesn't matter to them and reaching out to those people. So thank you, Bernice. I'd like to move on to Shalini. Tell us about the programs of Midan. Why were these programs started? Why did they start? Was there a certain event or what pushed Midan to start these programs, and what are you focusing on?
Thank you, Happy, and thank you, Rappler, for this event. So just for background and context, Midan is a global technology nonprofit. We build software and also programmatic initiatives, and these are mostly designed to strengthen journalism, fact-checking, digital literacy, and also the accessibility of information online. So we develop open source tools which are used for creating and sharing context on digital media through annotation, verification, translation. Midan started its work in 2010, so it's been more than 10 years now since we've been working in this area. And our vision is that of a more equitable internet. One of the things that we have noticed in the course of our work over the last decade is that we work very closely with fact checkers and with newsrooms. And around large events, there is always a lot of misinformation and disinformation that we all see. We know that misinformation follows the news cycle. So around elections, around the pandemic, any kind of political instability, protests, there is a lot of misinformation that starts trending on online platforms. So Midan's software, which is called Check, has supported a lot of fact-checking initiatives where fact checkers have tried to address misinformation at scale around large events. So election-related misinformation, we've supported many collaborative fact-checking initiatives in the United States in 2016, in Mexico in 2019, and this was all around the general elections in these countries. So US, Mexico, Indonesia in 2019, India in 2019, Philippines also in 2019, where our software Check supported the initiative check.ph that Rappler and Verifiles and the University of the Philippines led during that time. So these are initiatives where fact checkers come together. They use Check as the software that supports their verification process and also their editorial workflow. And over the last few years, we have developed Check and introduced many new features that can strengthen the work of fact checkers. So Check as a tool has more features that support automation, which means that fact checkers can focus more on the quality of work that they are doing. And a lot of misinformation that comes again and again and again, which we've seen during elections or even during the pandemic, when several claims are sent several times to fact checkers for verification. Check can respond to those claims, which gives fact checkers more time to focus on their work of fact checking. Again, for elections that are coming up next year in many countries, we are hoping that Check will be able to support those election initiatives and combat misinformation around these large events.
Thank you for that. I think it's very important you mentioned how these tools help us see the patterns of misinformation and disinformation, because it's not only happening in the Philippines, it's happening everywhere. So it's important for us to see that and see it in that context, because we see, I guess, the bigger picture and the machinery behind all of that. So Bernice and Shalini's experience is really on an organizational level, because they are with Foundation for Media Alternatives and Midan Asia Pacific. So now I'll move on to Leslie and Owen, who are individuals. So Leslie, I'll start with you. You are a communication instructor in Holy Angel University. How did you end up being interested in fact-checking as an educator?
I would like to begin by sharing the journey of the campaign that we've been spearheading for 5 years now. So the university as an institution which promotes integrity and truth, we saw the need that we be the front runners in promoting truth and integrity. And then if we will take a look in a smaller scale, communication program, we are honing and teaching the future media practitioner. So, if given this context, gusto namin na mapakita sa aming mga estudyante na ito ang papasukan yung industriya. And the industry then and now, very, very different. Kasi dati traditional media lang. And then you have gatekeepers. Pero ngayon, digital media and anyone can be a content creator. And anyone could claim that he has this information and then would say na this is the truth. Kaya nga, nagka-problema tayo na malaki when it comes to the proliferation of fake news. So, nakita namin na as an academic institution, one of our roles is to promote truth and make sure that our students who will be part of the media industry in the near future grounded sila with what's happening. It's very, very important. And then we actually launched this campaign. We call it I Am Real, Fighting Against Fake News. We launched it in 2017, February 2017. And then we invited, ang maganda pa sa campaign, happy, it's not solely within the university. We're engaging different academic institutions in the region. Until such time, we were able to build network. Nakasama na natin ang Democracy and Disinformation Consortium because they saw the efforts exerted by our students. They create communication plan, they created social media plans, they created jingle, they created logos. So yung effort, it's really concerted. And then to date, we have, and then even in the midst of the pandemic, we're able to transition sa mga face-to-face trainings and webinar and seminars we've been conducting the past years. Simula January to May, monthly, we hold mga webinars. So to date, yung campaign has reached like 4,000 students. Kaya lang nakafocus muna sa mga students. Kaya nga may moving forward din yung campaign. So currently, we're able to reach to a great number of students already. And we're able to partner with 30 educational institutions in Central Luzon, just to ensure and steer the promotion of the campaign. And little by little, the university is also receiving grants para at least mamobilize yung mga tao to ensure that we are on the right track in fighting disinformation.
Thank you, Leslie. I think it's very heartening to know that you base it on values. So, we hear a lot when you mention truth and integrity, like if as an institution, if an institution says they stand up for truth and integrity, fact checking is a way for you to practice that and to really, say what you do. It's to practice what you preach, in other words. So I think very, very heartening to know also. And of course, Holy Angel University has partnered with Rappler as well for some of the fact checking webinars. So we're very happy with that. Let's move on to Owen. Owen, you're joining us from Nueva Ecija. You were a mentee of Rappler and now a fact checking contributor. So why did you want to pursue something like this, diba? Parang marami naman, pwede ka naman gumawa ng content sa TikTok or something. Pero why did you choose this track of fact-checking?
Happy, alam mo, I am also a victim of disinformation. If you remember the start of COVID-19, when the claim about banana can cure COVID-19 circulated, I shared that post with my family and friends. And later, I found out that it was false. So, kasi pag na-rate ng Rappler yung mga post, merong lalabas na gray and then this is fact check by independent fact checker and you click the CY. So I read that fact check story on that. So during that time kasi nung start ng COVID, researches, studies, and factual information regarding COVID-19 is not that much since it is new. So because of that incident, I started joining fact-checking webinar. So I think I've attended more or less 5 sessions. So in that fact-checking webinar of Move PH, they discussed kasi the online landscape, methodology, and after that, merong spot check exercise sa dulo. So talagang na-move ako. Then after attending at least 5 sessions, I asked myself, what's next? And then I realized na I need to do more since ako mismo biktima. So I realized na I need to join sa fact-checking mentorship program. So i-differentiate ko lang yung sa webinar, the basic online landscape methodology. Mas intense doon sa mentorship program kasi you are writing and researching actual claim na you debunk na. So after that, after publishing at least 2 story, nakagraduate ako and I am now consistently writing and contributing fact-checking stories for Rappler.
Nice. I like your story, and very I also like that you are honest enough to yourself to admit that you were wrong. And I think that's a barrier for many people. Hindi nila matanggap na what they read was false. So I think that's one major step to acknowledge na okay, yes, I was wrong, but and the effort that you did, 'di ba? Parang naging suki ka na ng mga webinar and naging mentee ka pa. So really, really great story, and thank you for sharing that, Owen. And I think my next question that I will ask again all of you, what are the current barriers that you're seeing? So with the work that you're doing and the things that you're trying to see, will this work? What are the things that are the barriers to achieving what you want to achieve? And also, what are the things that you see work? So the successful things and the things that don't really work. So I'll start again with you, Bernice.
Okay. Barriers to the work. What we did actually is because we've been creating content, and these kinds of content are like, let's say, popular formats like comics. As much as possible, it's comics that's in, let's say, Filipino, or it's in Taglish. And then we also have actually songs. We'll be launching the official music videos for those soon, and podcasts, etc. So one barrier really is us putting on, like, from a content creators kind of view, or that kind of work. And of course that comes with a lot of things. So planning, etc. I mean, creating content is not that easy, especially if it's something that you want to be valuable in terms of it can reach people, it can help teach them. Let's say distilling even reports or research, it's actually harder to kind of simplify it in the right way. So that's one barrier, in the sense that we need a lot of time for this. We need a lot of even resources for this, because it's not that easy to create content, and it's not that if you want it to be well made and you want to support also artists, especially local artists, then you have to make sure that you have the resources also for it. Another barrier I would say is also trying to see what to attack first, I would say, because there's so many, especially in our line of work. If you look at tech and human rights, there's a lot of issues, there's a lot of problems that has to be there needs to be it has to be, I would say, focused on. But of course you have to choose. We have finite time, we have finite resources, etc. So that's also a barrier. And then also getting it out there, because we're a non-profit. We actually sometimes we joke that, alam mo, hindi ko akalain na gagawa tayong podcast, ganyan. But here we are, we created the podcast, ganyan. Now what do? Okay, wait, ano muna tayo, tanong-tanong how to do this, ganyan. Or even in collaborations with our artists, we also ask them, and then we also say that, okay, let us know if, because we're kind of new to this as well, so we have to kind of also learn on the job, really. So that's one. And success stories, I would say that, or like the comics, actually we didn't think that it would get that kind of attention, the good kind of attention, meaning it has really, we've been receiving comments also that people have learned from it. They resonate with it, they share it, and that's also already a good thing, because it's something that okay, we've been able to kind of successfully teach about something as as hard or as what you call as big a topic as disinformation and even other related themes to that. So that's a success. And also, parang seeing the content and seeing that how people sometimes really reach out to us and say that, oh, I really like this. And, I'm going to use it also to teach others, like even to their family, friends, even to students, like some teachers, maybe can we also, kind of help, use this, like let's say this podcast will really help, this episode will really help in our class, something like that. So that's already something very rewarding for us. And also we think that it's something that we're able to to kind of to bridge this gap that's missing. So hopefully we keep on creating some more. So,
Thank you,
yeah.
Bernice. I think it's important for us to really find the things that work and just keep replicating it. So for those of you out there who are watching that are skilled in making comics, so knowing that it is a medium that works, then let's do more of it. So baka may ma-inspire na participant ngayon na gumawa ng comics. Same question to you, Shalini. The barriers and the successes.
So I think Bernice talked about many of the barriers. And just to add to that, I think that language continues to be a barrier while fact checking, because misinformation, when we are addressing misinformation, sometimes it's mostly in languages that are spoken by majority people or the more mainstream languages, but there are so many other local languages, and we see misinformation appearing in those languages as well. So being able to address misinformation across different languages and dialects is really important. That's one barrier that we need to overcome. I think also the problem of misinformation that we see in smaller towns, in provinces, in areas outside cities, misinformation that we see offline. So there needs to be more conversations between what is happening online and offline, and for fact checkers to address conversations and narratives leading to misinformation offline also. One way in which that is possible, that we've also seen in some of the collaborations that we've been part of, is when newsrooms and civil society groups come together to address misinformation. So, you have more voices from the community that can access the work that fact checkers are doing, and also fact checkers responding more to what's happening in rural areas and in small towns. Another barrier is addressing misinformation on encrypted platforms, because what goes on there is very difficult to monitor, just because these are end-to-end encrypted. Unlike platforms like Facebook and Twitter, which are more public, where everyone can see what is trending. There are many other platforms that have encryption, because of which newsrooms and fact-checking groups find it difficult to see what's trending and also to address that at scale. So some of the things that have worked for us, I think the use of check and check supporting tip lines. So tip line is actually a service which is available to users of different platforms. These could be users of, say, Viber being popular in the Philippines, or say platforms like WhatsApp, which are popular in other countries, which are encrypted. These can be integrated with Check, our software, and then fact checkers can access content that is sent by Viber users or WhatsApp users or Line users on Check and respond to that. So being able to address content on or misinformation on encrypted platforms is a barrier that we are hoping to overcome through the use of tip lines. And I think one final barrier that I would like to add here is that the format of fact checks. Bernice talked about comics and using more popular formats. I think that's also really important for fact-checking groups and for newsrooms to think about, because misinformation really sometimes can be very creative. And that's why it's shared so often by people. The format that is used, the language that is used is sometimes one that appeals to a lot of people. Similarly, the verified content, the fact-checked content also needs to be in formats, in languages that are more shareable, more popular, that can be accessed by people across different regions, people speaking different languages. And we are hoping to do that with many of the partners that we work with in the Asia Pacific region and also in other regions.
Just a follow-up, because you mentioned tech platforms, and there was a question also here from one of our participants. Do you think that the current social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, are they doing enough to stop the spread of disinformation on their platforms?
There are some efforts being made, but I think the scale of misinformation is so vast that there's a lot more that needs to be done. And I think there's a huge gap there, which they need to fill. So yes, there are some efforts, some collaborations that platforms like Facebook and YouTube and others have been part of. But there's a lot more that can be done.
Thank you. I'll move on now to Leslie. So we talked about here how important it was that there are local initiatives, and I think yours is a very successful story. But what are the barriers that you're seeing right now, and also what are the best practices that you're seeing that you can share with us?
I think one of the limitations and the barriers that the team is experiencing is reaching the grassroots. Most of our participants in all the trainings, activities conducted in fighting disinformation, they're confined within academic institutions. They're students, they're college and senior high school students. But based on our research as well, majority of those who fall as victims of disinformation, at least within the province in Pampanga, are those who do not have access on education. Going back, we've mentioned earlier, I've responded to one of the questions of our participants. What are the reasons why citizens fall and believe disinformation and fake news? It's because of the cognitive ability. So we may be targeting currently the students, but I think there is more that we have to do when it comes to reaching the grassroots, because that is a challenge. Because you can't make this individual sit and listen to fact-checking methods, and also we are devising creative ways on how to reach out to them. Bernice and Shalini shared some of their best experiences, which we could probably draw inspiration from. So it's really reaching the grassroots. Doon pa kami kailangan mag-double time in working. But when it comes to learnings and the best practices, I think our participants would always tell us, the senior high school students, what they're learning in their media literacy class, these are being strengthened when they attend trainings, webinars with HAU, the I Am Real campaign, with the Rappler, and with all other partners. So that gives us the drive to keep moving forward. And then you'd realize as well, college students who are not communication, who are not communication students, like for example, they're engineering students, they're accountancy students, because this is not the fight of the communication students alone. So it's heartwarming when you hear their stories telling us that thank you very much for doing this, because we get to learn more beyond what we have to know inside the classroom. But a lot of work to do still. Happy.
Thank you, Leslie. And finally, Owen, what about you? What are the barriers that you face as an independent fact checker ngayon? So you are basically the success story of Rappler and other initiatives that train fact checkers, diba? But on a personal level, what are the barriers that you face, and what are the things that you see on your end na okay, this works and I will keep doing this?
Nabanggit kanina ni Miss Michelle kanina na day by day nagbabago yung landscape ng mga claims. So nabanggit ko sa experience ko na last year, more on the COVID-related yung mga claims, like nung simula, anong gamot sa COVID, saan nagsimula ang COVID. And then habang tumatagal, napunta sa bakuna yung mga claims. And then ngayon, election-related yung mga nakikita namin ang pinafact check namin claims. So I agree na isa sa barrier siguro yung language. So there are claims kasi that are written in other dialects. So it is hard for us fact checkers to translate them. In publishing our stories kasi, we started to write it in English, pero now yung mga election-related claims, we write it na in Filipino, and some stories are translated na into local dialect so that the audience can understand more. So kasi pag translated siya sa other dialect, it really took time and effort talaga kasi hindi kami familiar sa mga jargons and sa mga words na ginagamit nila. So it was like digging a tunnel using a spoon, sabi nga nila. And then, isa rin sa barriers ko personally na nandito sa probinsya, not all information is readily available eh. Hindi siya madaling hanapin. Not all data and information are easily searchable. Yun yung ilan sa mga barriers na nakikita ko since online and remote setup yung ginagawa ng Rappler research team. And siguro yung mga solution naman na I agree na we need to start talaga sa grassroots kasi ako mismo produkto and proud ako na isa din ako sa mga minsan nang nabiktima ng false claim, and then I tried to manage that, and then sumali nga ako sa mga webinar series. So we need to start talaga sa grassroots. And then me naman as an individual fact checker, almost 75% of the stories I publish galing sa community ko. So minsan nakikita ko sa chat group ng family namin, share ng ganito. So after that, siguro ang solution ko is I will tap them, send a message na, hey, ganito, ganyan. Pero in a way naman na hindi offensive kasi at the end of the day, pamilya ko pa rin sila.
Right, Owen. I really admire your patience. Ako rin kapag may nakikita ko sa mga chat group and it's your close family members and you're like, where to find the patience to answer. So, thank you, Owen. Ang dakila nating success story ng fact-checking. So, before we end, I'll just like to go one last round and ask all of you, do you think fact-checking is enough? If not, what is the one thing you think that will help us really protect the truth? Sabi nga nila, we're in a post-truth world, diba? Parang how did we even get here? Everything is upside down. Is fact-checking enough to combat this? Bernice?
For me, I think it should be complemented with a menu of other ways to combat disinformation. Kasi fact-checking is important. It's crucial. We have to know and we have to debunk kung meron mang, let's say, disinformation or misinformation na nakita. Pero we also have to realize then, most of the questions that kasi we also get, just a little backtrack, we get a lot of questions na, how can I talk to my tita or my tito who's spreading this in Viber? So it's more about what can I do also? If aside from the fact-checking, how can I reach out actually to my fellow human being? Or how can I communicate? Kasi this is important eh. And another thing is also to complement it with understanding more about, let's say, our human rights. Kasi honestly, ako, before FMA, I didn't really think about it. So parang, ay shucks, ang dami pala niyang interrelated na things. And sometimes with just understanding that and also having self-awareness, ganyan, and also reaching out to your closest, your circle of influence, malaking thing din yun eh. And these are things that kumbaga, it complements. It shouldn't be competing, these options, kumbaga, or these methods, or I would say, I don't know the exact, or siguro, remedies, maybe to information disorder. And yun, so we can't rely on just one thing. So hindi rin pwedeng, let's say, hindi rin pwedeng na puro, hindi, mag-uusap lang kami, ganyan. Kasi sometimes you also have to show them na ito yun, na fact check and why. And ito yung research, ito yung, let's see, the articles, ganyan. Sometimes they want to self-read or self-learn, ganyan. And hindi rin pwede na parang puro sa fact-checking lang kasi we also have to understand then how do we relay this? How do we also communicate the fact-check content to other people? Like nabanggit earlier then, I think na, like for example, those who aren't online, kasi we do have a digital divide. So how, di ba, that's another component na it has to complement and it has to be supporting each other. Parang ganyan. So yun. So that's my I guess.
Okay. Thank you, Bernice. Shalini, is fact-checking enough?
I also think that fact-checking needs to be complemented by many other interventions. I think improvement in the quality of journalism, good journalism is something that should exist. People should have access to independent news, credible news, verified news, which is why newsrooms like Rappler are so essential. I also think that media literacy is really important for many people in the global South. When they come online, they start accessing news on social media platforms. Very often that's not verified news. So having awareness of what can be the sources of verified news, what are some of the independent media news sites that they can access, how can they do basic fact checking on their own. So that kind of media literacy or digital literacy and awareness is really important. And like I said earlier, having more conversations between the work that we are doing online and what is happening offline at the ground level, at the community level, is also very important. And only when all these things happen, I think there can be an environment of good and quality news that is available to people.
Thank you. Same question for you, Leslie. Do you think fact-checking is enough?
Fact-checking is actually very, very important. I've had experiences where my supervisors, my superiors would send me messages asking me, is this a verified information? Because I got it from one of the group chats that I'm part of. So it really helps. That's why one of our initiatives as well was that we extend it even to our employees, because it's not only the students, not only shaping the future generation of making them understand the importance of truth and do fact check, particularly at this time, but even with our employers. But we have to couple it with execution of a multi-channel outreach. We could probably have a mix of the traditional and digital media in content creation that will engage our target audiences in platforms that they are most comfortable. Because sometimes we think that everyone is on Facebook, that no one or only few are on traditional media. But we have to understand that we have some countrymen who do not have access to the net still. And then it's also a challenge for everyone, like the group of Miss Bernice, Miss Shalini, that we have to create a dynamic audience segments that enables our efforts to match audiences, messages, the media, services based on their specific needs and preferences. And then in our case, we would love to inspire more academic institutions to initiate their own campaign in fighting disinformation. Just last Tuesday, I had a conversation with our comm students, and then I asked them, do you think there's an end to disinformation? It may be a long way to go, they told me, but so long as we have people who are willing to fight and willing to tell the truth, just like what Rappler says, hold the line and the courage goes on.
Thank you, Leslie. And finally, Owen, ang ating inspirational story. Owen, do you think fact-checking is enough?
I agree with my co-panelists na fact-checking is a good start, and we need to do more and a lot more. Gusto ko lang din i-share na I am from Nueva Ecija. I am one of attendee din ng Holy Angel webinar kila Ma'am Leslie. So naging part din ako. I think twice din ako nag-attend ng fact-checking webinar nila. I am from Ma'am Leslie, I am from College of the Immaculate Conception po. So
Perfect! Oh wow, yes. Thank you, Owen.
So again, siguro based on my experience, I am attendee of Rappler's Move PH fact-checking webinar and the Holy Angel. Siguro I will remind my fellow individuals, students, friends, and family that fact-checking is a must-learn skill if you are a digital citizen. I mean, it is timely and relevant because of the outpouring numbers of misinformation and disinformation. So based on my experience naman, the fact-checking webinar is for free. So you can join, learn, and participate in the comfort of your home since it is virtual. So siguro I will tell na lang din people na siguro every time na makakakuha tayo ng mga friends natin na nag-share ng false information, siguro lawakan na lang din natin ang ating pangunawa at habaan ng ating pasensya sa kanila. Dahil hindi rin naman talaga natin mababago yung paniniwala nila agad-agad or sa isang upuan or sa isang webinar lang. Like me personally, I've attended at least siguro with kasama yung Holy Angel, more or less 10 fact-checking webinars bago talaga ako natuto. So it is a process, a long process. However, I believe happy kasi if you care for them, you would also want the best for them. So pasensya talaga at mahabang pangunawa.
Ayun, thank you very much, Owen. A lot of people in the chat group are also saying they're very inspired by your story. So thank you very much, all of you, for joining us for this second segment. I can see Bernice's background. Gabi na yung background mo. So once again, thank you to Bernice Soriano, the Project Coordinator of Foundation for Media Alternatives, Shalini Joshi, Program Director of Midan Asia Pacific, Leslie Manalo from the Holy Angel University, and of course Owen Toledo, our convert, diba? So formerly webinar attendee, now an independent fact checker mismo. So and contributing na rin sa Rappler. So maraming salamat sa mga guests natin for the second segment. Thank you to all of our guests. I will call back on Jules to join me.
Thank you, Happy, and thank you so much to all our speakers for tonight. Sobrang very interesting yung discussion natin kasabay ng very stressful news day natin today kasi sobrang daming mga kaganapan kung mapapansin nyo. Pero this is very important kasi dito, syempre, yung information na kumakalat sa social media, what we can do to push back. Happy, from your end, ano ang mga takeaways mo?
I think for me, I think when it comes to fact checking, it's about not just finding the facts and verifying that and doing that process, but also finding the patience, the understanding, and the empathy to tell that story in a way that will resonate with people. Kasi mahirap when you're faced with someone, diba? We say sa mga Rappler fact-checking webinars, the most commonly asked question is, how do I confront someone close to me that what they're reading is fake, diba? So how do you tell someone that their truth is a lie? Masakit yon, diba? And I think that's something I struggle with personally also. How do you tell someone how do you tell someone politely? Like, how do you find the patience for that? And I think that's really my main takeaway na, in the end, the facts are there, but it's not enough. We need that human touch to really relay that message and show people na, this is the truth. It's hard to accept the truth, pero we're in this together, 'di ba? Wag tayo makipag-away, wag tayo mag-away kasi
lahat tayo, we're all citizens. We're all suffering the same things. So bakit tayo ang nag-aaway-away when really we're all on the same boat? Ikaw naman, Jules.
My takeaway is the real score today is, and we need to accept this current situation, that journalists are no longer the gatekeepers of truth. Laging sinasabi din ni Maria to, no? Because the currency of trust online in social media ay nakabase na sa number of likes, of shares, of follows, and subscribers. So what can we do right now? The challenge now is to push back kasi this shouldn't be the case, di ba? We in Rappler and our colleagues in the media industry can only do so much. Kaya nga we are doing this public shows lagi to encourage more people to help us in fact-checking. We need more people to amplify the truth. Diba, we've been always saying that we need collective action. Isang tabi muna siguro natin kung nasaan tayo sa political spectrum kasi ang mahalaga ngayon ay magkaisa tayo para magkaroon tayo ng shared reality. Kasi ang katotohanan ngayon, yung realidad na binubuo sa social media, nakabase na lang to sa bilang ng mga likes at hindi ito yung sumasalamin sa totoong katotohanan. Di ba ang weird happy na binabanggit na natin na merong totoong katotohanan kasi may iba't ibang alternative truths na nakumakalat ngayon. So siguro I'd like to end this na we are also calling out as well big tech giants like Facebook, YouTube, among others to genuinely address the spread of disinformation. You couldn't just rebrand a platform into Meta and just say na address na yung issues of disinformation. So I think they should really go beyond profit kasi of course they are companies and their priorities ay talagang profit oriented sila, but they should also think about the future of civilization. Yun na yung at stake ngayon kasi yung democracy natin, sabi nga nila democracy na kasi 'di ba parang nakabase na lang to sa bilang ng mga likes and mga shares. So sana mabago natin to. So May 2022 is very near already at malaking factor yung disinformation dito para kumalat yung iba't ibang forma ng katotohanan. So sana po magkaisa tayo para mag-fact check. Okay, and in line with that, shinare dito sa Zoom yung link ng Hold the Line series of activities. So for the whole month from November 10 to December 11, we have lined up a series of activities together with our partners to engage everyone to be part of our battle for press freedom and on fact checking. Okay, ayan.
Yes.
So, of course, this community show is one of the efforts of Courage On Coalition. If you are interested to be part of this ongoing coalitions like Courage On, No Lockdown on Rights Coalition, and PH Vote Coalition, please email us at move.ph@rappler.com. At syempre, makita-kita po tayo ulit next episode ng ating community show na mangyayari po in 2 weeks' time.
All right. So this is the end. Diyan nagtatapos ang community show natin. We had a very meaningful and fruitful discussion today. I hope all of you learned something or found out new information. And if again you want to share that, go ahead and please use the hashtag #CourageOn if you want to share your thoughts online.
And once again, this show is presented by Rappler's Move PH in partnership with Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom.
And we would also like to thank our co-presenters, Likha Pahinarya, the Louisian Courier, ang Rizalian Psychological Society, and Midan.
Okay.
So there you have it. That's the end of our community show. Don't forget na sa taumbayan ang kapangyarihan. We are stronger and louder together. Ako po si Happy Peraren.
Patuloy po tayong kumibo at magpakibo, kumilos at magpakilos. Let us speak truth to power. Maraming salamat po. Ako po si Jules Giang.
Tumindig, makialam at kumilos.
Courage On. Maraming salamat po.